Moving along, jail reduction, we did have the meeting with Jim. He presented updates on 4 possible options: status quo, convert existing jail to long-term housing and build new booking and release center, or increase current capacity of existing jail or a new green space facility. All those were discussed. He will be putting some numbers together, and he'll be back on January 25th. Correct? At 10 o'clock.
Friday.
It's a Friday, and we'll meet again. So progress is being made, but some options will be presented to you.
And I thought it was a good meeting, and I didn't want to damper anything on there, but I don't want this to all of a sudden become a jail building committee.
Right.
And I really feel like it's switched over to doing that really quickly. And I don't think that we've had time to necessarily see how that we can reduce the population. Because again, you know, what jail do you build?
And I think he's thinking that we will have, and he did put a deadline, you know, that by November we'll be through with the study. I think he's hoping that we'll have some statistics before we get to that point. And it's been a real balancing act for him between the two, you know, whether you're doing the jail and what it needs to be, or the different programs to reduce jail. And I don't think we're done with looking at those options, because some, in my opinion, and I may be speaking out of turn here, but I think depending on how these facilities may be set up, we all, you know, if they're set up with some mental health and some detox beds, it's going to help reduce the jail population, because we're going to get proper treatment instead of just cycling them through. I think we're still looking at options.
Well, I agree with you totally, both of you, but I do agree. I think that we're getting down to a narrower tunnel to where we can see there's an end to this tunnel somewhere along the line here, and hopefully it'll be the right decision, one way or the other.
Because I think the one thing that we're all pretty sure we don't want to just build a jail without having right statistics, and are we trying to reduce, you know, otherwise we're just building and we'll be building in 20 years.
Well, that's,
because
I mean, to
we're
me,
never going to cut down on the...
Adding on to the jail or building a new jail or whatever we're talking about is just one of several different options that are going to be available here. And whether it comes to any type of construction, will be up for determination.
I have a question for Mr. Weeks.
Yes, sir.
You got to sit in on that meeting.
I did.
And it's the first time.
Yeah, and it was quite informative.
What was your impression? I'm curious.
You know,
I've never had the opportunity, so I was just wondering.
Well, let me elaborate on that for a second. Because it's been a committee ongoing, there hasn't been any turnover in the people that go to it. It's no different than me going to the airport authority or you going to the mental health. That is a subcommittee that has been ongoing.
Right.
And Jim went. I asked him to go in my place because I was going to be out of town. And that's why Jim was able to go. I mean, it wasn't just a matter of, oh, you better go take a look at this. I wanted that second set of ears there.
And Commissioner, I appreciate that, and I understand where you're coming from.
So, and you go ahead with your elaboration, Jim.
the 2 meetings were very different and specific, and I think there was some thought process about what type of facility meets the needs of the clientele. And that's what I got out of the first one quite a bit. The second one, Judge Johnson made a remark that this isn't the purpose of what the judges want is not just to lower the numbers of people in jail. It's to do what is right for, there again, the clientele and the best avenue to correct behaviors and such. But I was all ears. I didn't even open my mouth because but it was informative, and I appreciate the opportunity to get to hear that.
And I think Monty would elaborate the same thing. As we've been through this, really, we haven't hardly had much to say. We're listening to what our options are. We're not authorities on how to do this, so we're listening to what our options are and best be able to feed back to you guys and to where we can make a proper decision on where to go forward.
Because the decisions that come out of that committee nothing's going to move forward without the county commission's approval, because it's going to be budget needs and such, so.
Well, we'll,
Yeah, and there's, anytime anybody wants to ask questions, I mean,
absolutely.
this all started because the million plus that we're sending out of the county is unsustainable. I get it. And so, but at the same time, if we would have okayed the jail by vote, it would already be overcrowded.
Right.
Right.
And so that's not the answer. So, we've got to look at ways, and we've only tried one. The low-hanging fruit we did today.
Right.
That's the one that everybody agrees on. But we haven't done anything about, ankle bracelets or any other.
Well, I think
ways.
that's going to be part of the pretrial too.
And one of
I think
the,
that's going to be one of the alternatives.
one of the things that came up, and it wasn't a benchmark, but it was brought up, and it kind of raised my ears a little, was the fact that you get these weekenders that come in, do their 24-48. They don't need the type of supervision and the cost of putting them in a jail environment where maybe community corrections could have a facility where they just check in there and it can be done less expensive, and it's better for them not to be in that environment. They're doing their time back to society, but they're thinking out there in a lot of different ways, and I think that's what's important.
I think they're looking at alternative jails than what we think of where you just lock them up. I mean, they're looking at, like he says, the short term, kind of like I don't want to say a hotel, but you check in and then you check out, and they don't take the high intensive. Plus, it's just screening them and getting that mental health people separated from your other inmates and getting them the right treatment so they're not just recycling back in as soon as they get out. I think all those things are there, and it might not be a bad idea this next one in January to just have everybody attend.
Sure.
So you can ask your questions, and because it's still in the planning stage. But I keep pushing Jim. I have to call him every so often and say, hey, Jim, we are working on both ends of this angle, because he's trying to keep a sheriff happy, he's trying to keep Annie happy, and sometimes that doesn't always get together. But I think we're getting to where Monty wants to be. It's just, my frustration is we're not hearing it all, because,
I mean, we can do kind of what we want as far as what we decide is the thing to do, but we're still going to be bound by decisions of what the courts and the judges say, or the defense attorney says, or the county prosecutor says. I mean, if they say somebody's going to jail for 6 months, we don't have anything to say about that. But we do have a say, or try to project a say on, like Monty says, how much money's going out of the county. Do we need to do something else and then bring the voters in on it? So I don't know.
I mean, he's also doing the statistics, which I think is interesting. Cost-wise, is it more cost-effective? Because he mentioned $35 a day is pretty darn cheap for your housing, where it costs more to house them within. So he's doing all kinds of computations here. So it's early in the game yet. So.
I still get back to that statistic about how many days people are in jail.
And this should help it with pretrial. Because if they never get in there, and then if they've been on, here's my vision, and maybe it's a glow-in-the-dark vision, but if they're put on this supervision, and if they're able to behave themselves or make corrections in their drug or alcohol, then by the time they go to trial, the judge can be more lenient, and they may never end up in jail as long as they're able to keep clean. And they certainly aren't sitting in there for how many days before they ever go to trial. And so I think we're going to see more results from the pretrial than where the judges see it. They're just looking at it from their end, but I think it's going to impact, it's got to impact the jails for the
And then the
bids.
pretrial is also going to be able to say, people that aren't a threat to society, if they don't have $250,
Right.
why are they in there for
Right.
20 days?
Right. I mean, some of these people, my God, they lose everything while they're sitting in there to go to trial, and
For
they can't start
250,
over.
right.
Yeah, and I mean, I know when I was doing the interviews for the Gina, that one gal, she'd been picked up on the highway for drugs, and she just didn't have money to bail herself out. So she was sitting in there all that time, And she knew when she went to trial, they were gonna release her, but she had to sit in there till then because she couldn't do her bail. So how many of those do we have?
And what was the number, Rita, of the expectant female population?
90.
No, how many are there in a motherly way are expecting?
Oh, five.
Oh, wait a minute.
There was five. I think there was six and one just delivered.
And that's on our healthcare here.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
We got 5 expectant females over there.
And that is one thing, if we have them out of jail, we don't have to take care of their health problems,
Or,
so.
yeah, feed them or do any
Yeah,
of those things,
yeah.
yeah. Again, but the pretrial will sit there and say, okay, the other thing that's nice about it, let's just say there's somebody that really needs to be in jail, but does have $100,000 to do bail, they get out.
Yeah, yeah.
And this would potentially stop that
Yeah.
too, say, no, this person is a threat to society, just because they've got money for $100,000 doesn't mean that they ought to be out. So,
Well, I think if wiser, this is one man's opinion, that if wiser heads were to prevail, I would predict that when we get to the end of this and we come up with, and Mr. Robertson makes his decision on what he suggests to us, I would venture to say that building a new jail or even adding on to the jail probably isn't going to be one of our options for the immediate future. That'd be my guess. We're going to let these statistics play out, this pretrial stuff play out, and then if that's not working, then I'd say we're probably going to be looking at building onto the jail. That would be just my own personal opinion.
I'm open to all of them.
I'm open to all of it too,
Statistics.
but I think that's how it's going to play out. That's what
One of the ones, the statistic that I think that you caught up on that maybe you don't know is we arrest less people than we did 10 years ago. Our arrests are down.
We just
But the
housed them.
the population is double.
Yeah.
Our population is actually down from last year. I mean, we were running at 300 people, or 290 to 300, 302 right along, and now we're running consistently around that 250 mark, 260. So it's down in that regard. So
But contrary to what the public thinks, we're not arresting more people, and that's why the jail is overflowing. We were arresting less people than we did 10 years ago. And I think maybe you picked up on that. Maybe I'm thinking.
Wouldn't you think that you got these 2 different studies going on? How do you do the jail study without implementing the pretrial study and seeing how that
You don't.
impacts your jail
You
and what it does?
that's what I'm kind of elaborating on.
Because otherwise, then you throw something in front of the voters like we did 5 years ago that wouldn't have worked.
Yeah.
And that's the beauty of what we're doing. We're trying to combine the two, and
It looks like.
and that's the reason we wanted to start pretrial now, so we can get some.
And the frustration of it all is, with government, we just don't move fast enough. We're not able to. I get it. I'm learning it slowly, but
And sometimes that's okay.
I get that.
Somebody told me once upon a time, government's crock pot in the microwave society, so.
That's
But
right.
anyhow,
So
anyhow,
crackpot.
some wise person, I think he was even with the city at the time, but anyhow, I am so thankful that this board went ahead and hired a consultant. And I thank for you guys going through the process, and because I don't have a clue when it comes to that judicial and the jail. I don't have a good handle on it.
I'm that much ahead of you. And I need to, it's been a lot to wrap your arms around, let me tell you.
But there's a lot of good expertise on that, and working on it.
Yeah,
It'll take time.
It's pretty exciting to me. I was cleaning out a cupboard or file cabinet, and I came across, let's see, it would have been over 15 years ago, because I think I've been administrator for 15 years. And back when Criswell was here, he was trying to get a judicial committee to do something similar and couldn't get him to come to the table. So it's sitting up there last week with the defense attorneys, the prosecuting attorneys, and the judges, and we were making progress. It was pretty darn exciting.
There you go.
I mean, so we're turning a page, so it's
So
it's
Jason,
good.
do you know anything more than you did 15 minutes ago?
Yeah, I'd say so.
I'm glad so. Anyway, all right.
Okay.
Good